Runaway bride. Hid under my jacket. Have you ever met someone at the exact moment their entire life was falling apart? Not when they were prepared, not when they were smiling for the world, but at that raw, unfiltered second when fear takes over, and everything they once believed in begins to collapse. Because I have, and it's a moment that didn't just change her life, it changed mine too. It was supposed to be an ordinary day, the kind of day that blends into every other day without leaving a mark. I was standing outside a small cafe, waiting for my coffee, distracted by my own thoughts, completely unaware that in a few seconds I would become part of a story I never signed up for. People were passing by like they always do, each one lost, in their own world, their own problems, their own destinations. And then suddenly the calm broke. She came running. Not the kind of running you see when someone is late or in a hurry, but the kind that carries panic, urgency, and desperation in every step. She was wearing a wedding dress, but it didn't look like the perfect dress people dream about. It was messy, slightly torn, dragging against the ground as if it too was trying to hold her back. Her hair was no longer styled, her makeup was fading, and her breathing was uneven, but it was her eyes that said everything. They were filled with fear so deep that it didn't need words. She looked behind her again and again, like something was chasing her, like stopping for even a second would mean losing whatever courage she had left. And then, out of everyone standing, there, she ran straight toward me. Before I could process what was happening, she grabbed my jacket, pulled it open, and whispered in a voice that barely existed, "Please, don't let them see me." In that moment, time slowed down. I didn't know her name. I didn't know her story. I didn't know what she was running from or who was chasing her. But somehow, none of that mattered. There was something about the way she said those words, something about the fear in her voice that made the decision for me. Without asking a single question, I stepped slightly forward and let her hide under my jacket, shielding her from the world as if that simple act could protect her from everything she was trying to escape. Her hands were trembling as they held onto my shirt. I could feel her heartbeat racing against me, fast and uneven, like it was trying to keep up with everything she had just left behind. And then, just seconds later, a group of people rushed past us. Their voices were loud, frustrated, desperate, in a different way. They were looking for someone. They were looking for her. I stayed still. Every instinct told me this was not my situation, that I should step aside, that I should let things unfold the way they were supposed to. But something deeper told me otherwise. Sometimes life doesn't give you the luxury of thinking things through. Sometimes it places you in a moment and silently asks you who you are going to be. And in that moment, I chose not to look away. The kind. Voices faded. The footsteps disappeared. The chaos moved on, and slowly she stepped out from under my jacket. For a second, we just stood there, two strangers connected by something neither of us fully understood. The world around us went back to normal, but for us, something had shifted. I looked at her and asked the simplest question anyone could ask. "Are you okay?" She smiled, but it wasn't real. It was the kind of smile people force when they don't want their pain to become visible. The kind of smile that hides more than it reveals. Then she said something that stayed with me long after that day ended. "I just left my wedding." There was no dramatic pause, no build-up, no explanation. Just a simple sentence carrying the weight of an entire life decision. I didn't interrupt. I didn't judge. I just listened. She told me she didn't love him, not in the way she believed love was supposed to feel. There was no connection, no sense of peace, no feeling of certainty. Instead, there was pressure, expectations, and a constant voice from everyone around her telling her that this was the right choice, that this was what stability looked like, that this was what her future should be. family, relatives, friends, society. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had a reason. Everyone had a plan for her life, except her. She stood at the altar, surrounded by people celebrating a moment that didn't belong to her. She looked at the man in front of her and realized something terrifying. If she said yes, she wouldn't just be accepting a marriage. She would be giving up herself, and for a brief moment, she almost did. Because sometimes, the hardest thing isn't making the wrong choice. It's going against everything and everyone to make the right one. But then something inside her changed. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was clarity. Maybe it was the realization that living a lie is worse than facing the unknown. Whatever it was, it gave her the strength to do something most people only think about, but never actually do. Instead of saying, "I do," she stepped back, turned around, and ran. No plan, no destination, no guarantee of what would happen next. Just courage. The kind of courage that doesn't come from confidence, but from desperation. The kind that says, "I don't know where I'm going, but I know I can't stay here." And somehow that decision led her to me. We sat down at the cafe after everything calmed down. The noise of the world felt distant, like it didn't belong to us anymore. I handed her my jacket, not because she was cold, but because she needed something to hold on to, something that made her feel safe in a moment where nothing else did. For a while, we didn't speak. And strangely, that silence felt right. Then, I asked her something that I wasn't sure I should ask. "Do you regret it?" She didn't answer immediately. She looked down, took a deep breath, and then looked back at me. This time, her expression was different. It wasn't filled with panic or confusion. It was calm, steady, and certain. "No," she said, "I'm scared. I don't know what happens next. I don't know how I'm going to explain this to anyone. But for the first time in my life, I feel free. Freedom." It's a word people use so easily, but they rarely understand what it truly means. Freedom isn't always happiness. It isn't always comfort. Sometimes it's uncertainty, fear, and loneliness. Sometimes it's standing alone in the middle of nowhere with nothing but your decision to guide you. But it's also truth. And truth, no matter how difficult, is always better than a life built on lies. That day, I realized something I had never fully understood before. We often think strength is about holding on, about enduring, about staying even when things feel wrong. But sometimes, real strength is knowing when to let go. She didn't run away from a man. She ran away from a life that was never hers to begin with. And if you think about it, maybe we all have something like that in our lives. Something we hold on to not because it makes us happy, but because we're afraid of what happens if we let it go. A relationship, a career, an expectation, a version of ourselves that no longer fits who we are. We stay because it's easier, because it's familiar, because it's safe. But staying has a cost that slowly takes away who you are until one day, you don't even recognize yourself anymore. Before she left, she turned to me and asked a question I wasn't expecting. "Why did you help me?" I thought about it for a moment, searching for a deep or meaningful answer. But the truth was simple. "Because in that moment, you needed someone," I said. "And I didn't want to be the person who looked away." She smiled. This time it was real, not perfect, not complete, but real enough to show that something inside her had shifted. Then she stood up, adjusted the dress she had almost been trapped in, and walked away. Not running, not hiding, but walking like someone who had just taken back control of her life. I never saw her again. But sometimes, I think about that day. About how one random moment connected two completely different lives. about how a small decision, something as simple as letting someone hide under your jacket, can become part of a much bigger story. And it made me realize something important. You don't always need to change someone's life completely. Sometimes, all you need to do is be there in the moment that matters. To offer safety when someone feels exposed. To offer silence when someone is overwhelmed. To offer presence when someone feels alone. Because you never know what someone is going through. You never know what they're running from. And you never know how much your small action might mean to them. So if life ever puts you in that kind of moment, where someone needs you without saying much, don't hesitate. Don't overthink it. Don't step back. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do isn't solving someone's problems. It's simply standing beside them while they find the strength to solve it themselves. And maybe, just maybe, that's what truly matters. In the end, this is HeartHacker, where stories don't just touch your heart, they remind you who you are when it matters the most.